Hello everyone and welcome to round 3 and the guide for round 3 of GT Academy 2014. We're at Bathurst this time, so Mount Panorama in Australia, and we're in a GTR. One thing with this GTR, it does react like the car in real life. It's 4-wheel drive, so a slightly different technique again to rounds 1 and 2. Obviously round 1 was a front wheel drive car, round 2 was rear wheel drive, we're now with 4-wheel drive. If you haven't tried the other 2 rounds, I recommend going trying them and maybe even watching the guides of those, because the key points in this are going to be precision again, and there's going to be weight transfer. Obviously we're going on a mountain basically, so obviously there's a lot of weight movement in the car, especially on that upper section. The one thing we will be using to manage that is going to be a bit of throttle when braking, because it just stabilises the car a little bit, stabilises the weight and the weight movement. But we're going to be learning some more new things in this one. So we're going to be looking at just the car rolling in general. If the car's not braking or accelerating, it's got freedom to do whatever it wants. Using the track to our advantage. Now I've used this in the past with Rome especially. The track at Rome is really good for that. We've got some aspects on that in this that we can use. And of course we're going to be abusing the 4-wheel drive and actually just the trickery of the GTR. Because like real life, it does lots of magical things which make it go really fast, or insanely fast for what the car is. I mean, it's like hypercar performance for just a sports car really. So that's the GTR for you, and we're hopefully going to use that to our advantage. Another thing as well with this combo, shadows are quite useful. They're especially useful for the first corner. I've had one time where I've come in and it's been cloudy, so I've had to exit and come back in. So if that happens, just do what I've just done really, just exit and come back in, because the shadow is very useful for this first corner. Well, it's more useful than looking to your right, you can just look at the road. So yeah, let's kick off the round 3 guide, and we're going to kick off with the first corner. Don't worry about your speed across the start finish line, there's no problem. So you'll see the borders on the left. Basically, once you pass them and the first shadow, which I just consider a part of the banners, the borders, whatever you want to call it, we're going to be approaching this next shadow, and this next shadow is going to be your first braking phase, or braking zone. Now the first section of course is just one corner, as you're probably well aware. The thing with this corner, I'm quite consistent, like getting in the 0.3s, low 0.4s in this one, and the reason being is that I found that if you brake, it's better to brake late than brake early for this one, which is quite weird for just generally, like compared to the last round and just generally really, because normally you want to brake early just so if you do brake a bit too early you can just come off and let the car roll a little bit. But if you brake late you can be more aggressive and abuse the 4-wheel drive, which I mentioned we're going to do. So this shadow, if you brake just after it and brake hard, you'll initially think, oh no, I've gone too quick. But when you approach the corner you can just come off the brakes and just turn in, and basically you're just going to chuck the car in. Now you don't want oversteer with this car, you don't want oversteer in any part of the track, but a little bit of oversteer or slip, basically the ECU will catch it for you. You can just put your foot down straight away, you don't have to correct the slide or anything like that, and you can just fire out the corner basically. So I always aim to try and brake a little bit later on this one, just so that I can get a quicker run out the corner. So you're going to brake just after the shadow, you're going to drop to second gear, and when you feel it right, you want to come off the brakes and just chuck it in and then start accelerating. You'll start accelerating before you hit the apex, because basically the car will catch it for you. But just be careful of the exit. So we'll just do that now. So you can see that I brake just on it there, but I'd brake just after usually. I dropped to second gear and watched myself turn in straight away. Now I stayed on the brakes a little bit there, but watch me accelerate now. I'm accelerating before I've even hit the middle of the corner, and that's because essentially I'm just getting around the corner. Now because I'm in second gear, the weight sort of moves more to the right. I'm getting a bit of oversteer, hit third and then accelerate out. If I'm any more to the right than I am now, I'm going to get disqualified. So I was quite lucky here really, but I was on the curb, try and come off the curb straight away. It's not that important, this sector, to be honest. It's the least important sector actually. Obviously psychologically you want a good first corner, but I wouldn't bother with it too much. you'll just accelerate this, and we're going to carry on through Mountain Straight. One thing I forgot to mention as well is I'm racing Dan's sector times on this. Now you've seen on my previous ones I'm racing Ghosts. I'm racing sector times on this. Now personally my friends list is full of quite fast people at the moment. Well, some fast people. There's other people, other friends and stuff like that who aren't as in the top 10 or whatever. So for example, Dan's on my friends list. If the lines are on, you'll find that going uphill on this track, they cover all the apexes and you can't see a thing. So it's best to turn them off and just learn the lap yourself, really. This just shows as well that I don't actually need the Ghost. Just an FYI for anyone that was interested in that. But basically, yeah, just turn them off at this point because you want to see the apexes on this. Because the barriers are so close to the apexes, you have to be able to see the apexes, otherwise you're going to struggle and you're going to start hitting barriers and getting frustrated very quickly. So that's just a note for that one. But yeah, accelerate out that corner and you can just fly down this straight. Now there's no real technique to getting down this straight like any faster. If you go to the left straight away or right straight away, I just normally diagonal this really, unless I've had to come across quite quickly from the exit to make sure I don't get disqualified, then I'll be more on the left. It doesn't matter that much. But you're going to accelerate down. You'll notice all these road markings. Now one of these is going to be our brake marker for the next point, next corner. But obviously we're just going to get through sector 1 first, so all easy enough. This next corner is going to be very aggressive and the shadows go against us on this next corner. Now sector times, 0.3 is obviously perfect really, 0.4 is very very good, 0.5 is good, 0.6 is alright, and then obviously go down from there really. Ooh, I'll just play it a bit more. Right, and we're at our next braking zone for the second corner. Now basically you'll see this road marking, basically goes from the edge of the track on the right, comes over, it's really dark in the middle and it's got like a little sort of chicane in itself on the marker. You're going to brake just after the end of that chicane on the marker, and you're going to brake hard. Now if you're struggling time wise, I'd brake on that, because you can just roll into this. This is one way you would want to roll. You don't want to be too aggressive. If you're too aggressive, you're just going to run wide and get disqualified, or hit the wall and get disqualified. Basically just red lap everything really. So if you're quite low on the leaderboards, brake on it. If you're going for top times, brake just after it, and you're going to brake hard. You're going to come down to third gear. Now I said the shadows are going to go against us, and that's because they're covering the curb basically. You want to turn in, but you want to make sure you're as close to the curb as possible, but not on the curb, just so that you get a really good line through and you can accelerate out really quickly. I found if you brake a little bit too late on this as well, actually, it's worth noting. If you brake a bit too late, if you chuck the car in a bit earlier, obviously you're going to scrub a little bit more speed and you will get a slower exit, but it may help you just save a lap and keep you going. So just keep that in mind. If you do brake really late and just think, oh no, just chuck it in a little bit early, you might be able to catch it. You will have to trail brake a lot in if you do it really aggressive and really late. But yeah, if I have to trail brake a little bit on this lap because I've just broke a little bit too late. It's only a tiny bit, it's only minuscule, but it still allows me to turn in. Now apex speed for this corner, doesn't matter what you do. You can be really high and have to maintain an average, or you can be really low and just absolutely plant your foot. It doesn't matter too much really. Just make sure you get around the corner as safely as possible, because there are much more important corners in this lap. So as you see now, I'm just going to start braking. That's fourth gear, third gear, and I turn in just after this shadow. It's not purposely, it's just gives you an idea. As you can see, I'm just trail braking a little bit because I've just need to knock off a bit more speed down to 72. I've seen people be at 76, but they're having to do half throttle just to make sure they get around the corner. And then it's just, for me here, it's just full throttle out because I've gone in really aggressive. The exit curb there, you must be careful of that. If you go over that, you're going to get disqualified really. You can go just over it and survive, but you're playing with fire there really if you're going over that curb. The exit of that curb is a sort of like a speed trap for you. You know if you've done the that corner very well, if you're around 90, 91, 92 miles an hour. If you're any lower, you just need to work it out a little bit better. But for the next one, the next one's quite an important corner. Do be careful of the right hand side, because obviously you're going to go over there because that's the racing line. If you go too far over this white line, you will get disqualified. no point going too far over, to be honest, just for the way the corner is, and you'll hear why as I explain it now. So there are two ways really to do this. If you're doing it any other way, I'm quite interested to know what you're doing. But you've got, well, you got my way or the other way. Personally, my way. Well, let me explain the corner first. You're going to come in and it's two corners. This first corner is just basically a really annoying corner because you're affecting the braking zone for the second corner. The second corner is a really slow left-hander, but it can gain you quite a bit of time. It's the most important corner in this sector, I would say, in Sector 2. And Sector 2 is the second most important sector out of the four. So, you know, it's worth a few attempts here. So you do want to get this right. So I normally let off, and as I turn in I brake slightly, and what that does is it scrubs off a little bit of speed, and then I can vary my braking throughout the next part of the braking zone and just make sure I get a really tight line around the left-hander. Other people would like to speed through here, not really let off, and just slam on for the next part of the braking phase, which you can do. The problem with that second one is that you will have the risk of running wide, because obviously if you're 100% brake you can't turn. As you'll see with my technique, I'm varying between 20-50% braking, and basically because obviously the wheels are only doing 50% of a job, they can do the other 50% of turning, and it just allows me to get a really tight line. And you want a really tight line because there's a lot of camber there. So if we go through this first phase, you see I let off, and that was about 35% braking there. Just keep putting the throttle a little bit because I just want to maintain a bit of speed. I wouldn't recommend doing that if you're lowering the leaderboards, just let the car roll. And as you can see now, I'm going to start playing with the braking. Now, as this left-hander basically goes uphill, if you think of an uphill section, the more speed you get through there, you're going to gain more time all the way up the hill. So, on the inside is where there's going to be the most camber, and if there's more camber, it's going to make sure that you don't oversteer. If you're on the outside of the corner, you're going to oversteer more because you're going to full throttle out trying to catch up that speed. So do be careful of that. If you're on the inside, just make sure you balance the throttle. You're gonna turn in and you're gonna think you're going to hit the barrier. I wouldn't worry about that too much, even if you hit the barrier. If you're lower down in the leaderboards, you can gain time elsewhere. I said it's an important corner, but Sector 3 is the most important sector of them all. However, if you hit the barrier slightly, you're just going to learn the line basically. So try and stay as tight as possible and then start to accelerate out. You'll want to straighten up a little bit on the exit before the corner's finished, just to stop any oversteer before turning again to carry on. Basically it's just going to stop the weight moving all the way to the right rear tyre basically, and then you're having a bit of oversteer. So we'll just watch that now. You can see my braking varying throughout. I'm starting to turn in. Initially it's going to start to look like I'm going to hit the barrier, and there we go. I'm just using the camber. I'm 3/4 throttle and then 100%, and watch me straighten up there. That's exactly what you need to do, and then I start turning again. Basically that straightening up just means I don't get any oversteer. If you get any oversteer here, it's going to be quite crucial. As I said, you're going uphill now, you're accelerating a lot. Any speed lost, it's going to be a huge time loss really, or big time loss. It's not as big as anywhere else on the track. So that's that corner really. Just stay tight and accelerate out and straighten up as best as you can. Make sure you don't go too wide. As I said, I think my way seems to be more consistent, and it just does seem to be generally quick. It can be slower if you brake too much in the first part. You've just got to sort of balance it up really. But if you just do it generally, you'll always get in the 13s. I've never really been in the 14s since I started being very consistent there really. So we're going to exit out of here, and we're just going to full throttle out. Don't go too far up on the curb on the inside, no real point. And be careful on the exit. You'll notice I take a really weird line here, and that's purely for the fact that if you go anywhere near the barriers, you seem to hit them before you think you're going to hit them. A bit weird. So I just stay to the right of them, but there's no point risking a lap if you're, by hitting them or getting too close. Of course you need to be close enough for the next corner, so you'll see me start to edge over, but there's no point trying to get an absolute perfectly smooth exit. So I'm just going to play that a little bit more, and you'll see I'm now close to the barrier, I'm about to start turning in. Now with this corner, you're going to find that, well, I've done it many times and gone dough. I've done it again, but you'll always want to turn in, but you need to sort of wait a little bit before you turn in. You'll always find yourself turning in a bit too early and then sort of putting your foot down to try and stop, try and cause some understeer so you make the corner. But basically you're going to lift off only slightly. You'll stay on the throttle a little bit, it just maintains a bit of balance, to about 50%, and then you're just going to balance it through the corner. You're going to be turning quite sharp as you balance that, just to make sure you make the corner really. Now you can hit the barrier on the exit. Well, I'll say hit. You can graze the barrier on the exit. You've also got some curb in there. Now this is all about, I said about sort of using the track to our advantage. Because the curbing's slanted, it's not flat, it's a slight slant, it can catch you a little bit. So if you are looking like you're about to hit the barrier, I wouldn't panic too much because it will catch you. If you do graze it, it'll knock a couple of miles an hour off, but it's not, you know, it's not massive amount because you'll be braking pretty soon after that. So you can use the curbing, and I wouldn't worry too much. Just be careful about entering this corner, because it will catch you out if you turn in a bit too early. As you can see, I'm just maintaining the balance of throttle, and then I start accelerating out. As you can see, I've got a really good line there, and it's just really smooth. The exit of this curb here, the end of it, 105 you want to be at. I actually get 106 here. Pretty good. You know, that's exactly what you're aiming for. And as you can see, the curve's slightly slanted and it can catch you there. And we're going to come to another important corner, and this one is all about consistency. So I'm just going to pause it here. So I've talked about consistency on that sort of left-hander, letting off slightly. This one's a big one for consistency, and I found this out when basically after my first session. I thought, oh, hang on, I'm doing the top section completely wrong here. Every time I get there I do something different. So there's two ways you can do this. As you come down the hill, you can brake before you get to the bottom of the hill, and you'll just be on the throttle slightly. As I've mentioned, we'll be doing this quite a lot now because we're on the sort of hilly sections. The weight's going to start moving everywhere. So if you brake and stay on the throttle slightly, it's going to slow the car down, but the weight's not going to move too much, and you'll be able to turn in to the next left-hander. Or you can do what I do on this video, or actually you go a bit further and do this, because I do it slightly a bit too early, as you'll see in a second, which is just brake and the car will jerk its way over, because obviously the weight's moving suddenly and very violently. The car's obviously then being shoved in a way, well, gravity is forcing it in a way. But that's only for the really fast times. I would personally, if I were you, especially if you're just trying to get into the 13s or 14s, go for consistency. So brake as you're going down the hill, only slightly, be very smooth with it. You don't have to be 100% slam on and all this lot, just slightly. Make sure you just slow the car down enough, 107, 108 miles an hour, and then turn in, roll in, and then start to accelerate. All you're after is a really smooth line through these corners. They're not important, but getting them consistently right means that the important sector, because that we're going to come to the important sector, when you start nailing that, the consistent bit's always right, and then you get one of those corners right and you win, you get a decent lap, and then you can be like, ha ha ha, I've done it, I'm wherever on the leaderboard. So brake, start to brake as we come down here. So I'd brake just before that. As you can see, I broke there. I would brake a bit further if I was going for the top times, and you'll see the car jerk. So you can see the car jerk there, and you notice it's turned me in a bit too early. I'm easily going to hit those cones, so I've had to straighten up a little bit. So it's not the best line that I've done there. So it's not really a good example. I'd brake a bit before that for consistency, and just have a dab of throttle, and the car won't jerk violently, and you can just turn in. It will be a slower time through there, but losing a tenth and gaining a ton of time elsewhere on your lap, that's what you want. Losing a tenth to gain more elsewhere is better, or losing a tenth every lap to gain more elsewhere is better than sometimes gaining, sometimes losing there, and then having weird situations later on in the lap as well. Be careful of this exit. If you run too wide, you will get disqualified. No need to run too wide, really. And then we've got this blind sort of over crest into fast left. bit of rallying, co-driving there. Your braking zone, and we're going to do the same again, is this start the exit curve, and we're going to brake, and you dab the throttle slightly just to stop any weight movement. Obviously we're going over crests, so the car's going to be really light. So generally I like to start turning in just before I hit the crest. It just gives me the advantage of being able to manipulate the car a bit better. If I don't turn until over the crest, the front's light for a while, and then I turn in, and then I run a bit wide. I run a bit wide on this run, but I maintain a decent speed throughout. And what you'll find here is that you'll turn in, and you might think, oh, am I going a bit quick, or am I not going a bit quick? You can find that you'll actually be able to put your foot down quite early on, and the car will keep its grip. Basically, the trickery of the GTR, four-wheel drive, the ECU, okay, we can keep the car going, it'll keep the grip. So yeah, I'd just brake just on this curb and start to turn in just before the crest, and it'll just give you a bit more momentum. Don't turn in too much, because obviously you just hit the barrier straight away, but you'll get the idea as you start doing laps. So you can see that I just turned in a little bit too late. I normally turn in a bit earlier than that, and then I'm on the curb and I'm really close to the barrier. Obviously I'm too far away there, and it loses me about a tenth and a half to the sector times I'm running against, and that's why I'm 2 tenths down coming into this sector. And I'm going to pause it there. So that's the end of sector 2. Well, it's end of sector 2 in a second. So you'll notice going into sector 3, I've changed to 5th gear, and you'll notice on most of the replays, I think on the top, I've only seen a couple, they stay in 4th gear. Now I'm in 5th because the technique I'm doing. Now you've got 2 techniques again. You stay in 4th and try and get the try and maintain a stable weight throughout this, but I go for a bit more of an aggressive approach with this one, because obviously changing gear, there's a bit of weight transfer in there. We're about to start going downhill, and obviously downhill is quite rapid. If there's any weight change in the car, when you start braking, the braking's not going to be 100% effective, and you're going to have issues all the way down the hill. And obviously we're going into the Esses, basically it's called. So it's this first part's a right, then we've got a left, then we've got a right, left, right, left, right, left, left. The last one's a bit of a double apex sort of thing, but as you hear there, it's one after the other. So say if I start oversteering crazily coming out into this one, then it affects the next one, affects the next one, then it affects the next one. This is where all the time is gained on this lap period. It doesn't matter what you do anywhere else. When I was in the my first lap that I uploaded, the 213.5, I was constantly getting 213.5, 213.6s. I was constantly losing 6 or 7 tenths in this third sector, and it's all because of this. Once you work this out, you'll gain loads of time really, really quickly. So I come into here, I want to basically enable myself to straight line this first sort of after this first corner to the left. So obviously we're turning right, but we're going to go into a left, and that's so I can scrub off all the speed there. Now you can try and scrub off the speed beforehand, but I think you lose too much time in my opinion. You can scrub it off later on in this section. If you're on a really low time, I would scrub it off just before. I'd do more braking at this point. You've got to judge that yourself really. But I'm in 5th, so that when I change to 4th, the rear's going to come out slightly, but then I'm going to use the throttle slightly and then brake. And what that means is I'm going to be straight lining the left, and then it gives me a really good chance to then get the right correct. So obviously we're going into the section here, so as you can see there, I drop down straight away. You can see the oversteer, I'm on the brakes, throttle to stabilise it a bit, and then hard braking, and now I turn in, and now basically I'm coming into one of the most important corners of this sector. Not for time though, not for time. Sorry if you just got a bit of a mic spike there, but this is one of the most important corners to set up the time corner. So we're going to come into a really sharp right. It's like a double right really, but if you can get this corner right and have no weight transfer in the car, you're going to get a really good left hander, and there's lots of speed there because you get a bit of an acceleration point. So you know, just make sure you get this part right. So as you saw there, I got the first part right, and this car's really stable at the moment, so I know I'm going to come into this right-hander really well. I'm going to brake hard again, and you know, there's no apex speed for this right-hander. You can do it at 60 all the time, you can do it at 55. You'll see me drop to 55 and then accelerate a little bit just to keep up the speed a little bit for the left-hander. So watch this now, as you'll see me again, brake hard, brake hard, brake hard, drop to second, come off the braking now, and I'll just start to roll it. And as you see there, I just come on the throttle a little bit, and that's sort of the double apex. You see me first hit it, I came out slightly and then I came back in. But I've got the perfect line for this. Now, you'll have experienced this already because I've experienced this. If you've come into there super hot, super aggressive, weight moving all over the place, you're probably so far to the left of the track right now that this left-hander's useless for you. And I can guarantee if you're any further to the left, you're going to be losing half a second, 8/10, even a second, straight away. This is how important this corner is. You can gain an absolute ton. So obviously I've been really smooth. As I approach this corner, and this corner is important, but it's the one where you're going to get disqualified the most at. Because if you cut this corner on the left, you're going to get disqualified. You can cut it a tiny bit, but there's really no point in risking it. So if you brake just after the curbing and start to turn in just after the curbing, you'll find that you can just miss the cut, but you can get a really good acceleration point out. It's quite hard to explain, so let's just show you. So as you see there, I just turn in just after the curbing. I wouldn't pay attention too much to that curbing, but I'm accelerating straight away. Then I'm going to change to third gear and accelerate out. And I use that shadow as a bit of a time reference point there. It's, you know, just turning 16. But notice as the corner, the right-hander starts to get too tight and turn away from me, I start to turn left. And I came through that, and it was all really stable. Stability is the key to this middle section. That's all you've got to do. Keep it stable. Don't go in super hot because you're going to start losing loads of time. Just keep it stable, keep it smooth, and you will get really good lap times. So at this point, obviously I accelerate out. This is why it's important. We're going downhill. Any quicker acceleration, the more time we gain compared to, you know, a flat piece of track. Now we're going to come into this last part of the third sector. Now this first part, once again, affects the second part, so the right is quite important to the left. Now, if we talk about the left first, so the corner after this, if you get out of that corner, if you accelerate quickly out that corner, you are going to get a big advantage. If you maintain more speed throughout that corner and accelerate out fast out that corner, you gain even more of an advantage. And we're going onto a massive long straight called Conrod Straight, so any time here is huge. So obviously we've got two corners here that have been important to us. We've got the last left and this left coming up. Practice one of these, don't do both at the same time. Focus on one, try and get it right. So when I was doing this, I focused on the last left first, and then I focused on this left. Why, you ask? Well, if I can get the stability right coming down the hill, then I can start focusing on this bit, which is after the hill, and then it all should follow through and I should start getting quicker lap times. So now you've learned everything else, we come back to this. I'm going to go into the right-hander. I start to brake here just to initially get a bit of a slide on, but I don't want to slide too much. I then use the throttle to balance it a little bit. I want to be sort of in the middle or to the right slightly of the track. If you're more to the right, you can actually get a really quick left, but it's really difficult. You actually scrub off too much speed to try and get really far to the right. So sort of the time gain from being so far to the right is lost in the initial part. So you've got to sort of find a middle ground essentially, which is normally the middle of the track. So I'm going to start to brake and then turn in. I've dropped third gear as well, it just makes the car a little bit unstable. That's just to try and get myself into the middle of the track, and you can see I'm on the throttle again, and then I'm going to be hard on the brake. Now you may find you've oversteered a bit too much, and I get this a few times. If you start to oversteer too much, use the throttle again, just dab the throttle slightly, and basically that's going to stabilize the weight in the car, and then the braking is going to be more effective. You've got to remember that it may seem against your mind. Basically using the throttle is going to slow you down more than just slamming on the brakes, but basically that throttle is just going to balance the weight and allow the brakes to work better. That's what it's doing. So as you can see, I'm quite far to the right, but I'm going to be more to the middle in a second, just the way the weight's moving. And I'll trail brake initially in the first part of the corner, but then I'm going to let the car roll in the second part. Obviously we're going downhill, so we're going to maintain speed as we roll, but if the car's not braking or accelerating, all it has to do is turn. And I want you to think about that for a second. All it has to do is turn. All it has to do is turn, you're going to get the best turning angle you've ever had. And it's at that point, if you get the best turning angle, and obviously the weight's then moving slightly, if you then suddenly floor it, you'll be able to come out the corner really quickly. Now as obviously you're coming out the corner, you're going to understeer if you start accelerating. If the weight's already on the back right, it's not going to understeer as much and you can fly out that corner. So that's what I'm going to try and do. So obviously I'm braking. I'm then going to start to trail brake, and that's just to knock off a little bit of speed, and I'll just let the car roll. Looks like I'm going to hit the barrier, and then full floor it there. And because obviously I've got no understeer at this point, look how much of the track on the right I could still use. So there's still time there for me personally to gain. But obviously you get the idea of just letting the car roll and then flooring it. And I couldn't see the exit of the corner initially, but I knew that I wasn't going to get as much understeer. I could just fly out that corner, and obviously I'm just nailing it down Conrad straight now. As I said, just practice one of those two important corners or sections really. So it's the right or the left, the first one, or the right and the left of the second one. Practice one, don't practice both. Once you get one consistently right, or right on more occasions than not, then go to the other one, and you will see your lap times drop, because that is where all the time is. And it's hard to realise it until you start playing around with it a little bit, which is what these guides are for. So we're going to come over the hill now, big long straight of course. That's why that corner is important, just for the fact that it affects all this little bit. Now I'm just going to pause it here. So obviously we've got this sort of left bit of tarmac here. Don't go too far into that, it'll disqualify you. Go into it a little bit though. You might have to play with this a little bit just to get an idea on your screen of how far you can go in. But basically it's just going to allow you to straight line the right hander coming up, or it's like a little dint really in the track as you come into a really heavy braking zone. Basically the straighter you are, the less weight movement, and then you can brake better. Similar to the other corner, but obviously we're on a flat bit now, or fairly flat. And you need to be able to brake properly, like 100%, so it slows you down enough. And obviously if you have a more stable weight in the car as you come into this braking zone, the later you can brake, obviously the more time you gain. So something to think about here, making sure that the car is stable as you come into this braking zone. So I tend to go over to the left a bit, and then I come across, as you see there, and you'll notice the weight of the car will start to move a little bit as I come over this crest. Now I start to brake where these markers are on the left. I sort of see it in the corner of my eye. I'm not looking for them. I sort of see it. Generally though, you sort of know when you can brake on here. Usually it's just after you've turned really, and you have to brake hard. Once again, if your weight's moving all over the place, just shoot the throttle slightly. You will see me use the throttle slightly in a second because the weight is still moving a little bit. But basically that little bit of throttle dab that I do while braking just stops the weight moving all over the place, and it allows the brakes to work properly, and that's all you want to do. The brakes working 100%, so it slows you down, you get around the corner and just accelerate and fly away. So I use those markings on the left, and I'm going to start braking. Notice the dab of throttle in a second. There we go, dab of throttle. That was just stop the weight moving, the car was still moving about, and now I'm braking again. I've moved over to the right just so I get a really good line. I'm going to drop to second gear, and then I'm just going to come off and let it roll a little bit and then accelerate. Same sort of thing as the important corner in sector 3, just letting it roll and then accelerating out. I should have stayed in second gear a little bit longer, but obviously at this point I'm realising I've made the corner, I'm on for a pretty good lap. I just changed to third for safety. You may want to do that as well, entirely up to you, but you can run quite wide on this and still survive. As you can see there, I've got loads of room there. And you can really chuck it into this curb in. It sort of grabs you a little bit, like GT Academy 2012 with the Leaf at Monza. It sort of grabs you, and you can use that curb on the exit there just to save you a little bit, because obviously it's raised, it'll catch the car a little bit and you don't have to worry too much about going over that. And we're approaching now Murray's Corner, which is the last corner of the lap, and one that people will more than likely get wrong again, and one that I've got wrong several times when I've been on a flying lap. So basically we have some cones on the left, and then the start of the pit entry. Now this is your braking zone when you're on the right. You'll see them just pass and you'll brake. One thing that you probably might not realise is that you're still going downhill a little bit, so you might find the weight starts to move a little bit again. So sometimes you may want to dab the throttle a little bit to make sure the weight stops moving. Now, unlike the first corner where being aggressive going into it was good and braking later all the time gave you a better outcome in sector 1, this one braking earlier does. Basically, because if you brake too late, you're going to suddenly swing round and have oversteer on the exit, and then have oversteer. If you've got oversteer, you're not going to have a fast finish, are you? And you're going to lose loads of time, and obviously you just want to get around the corner safely. So brake there, brake early if you need to be. I braked slightly bit earlier there. Brake, that's the one I'm on a really fast lap. Braking, use the throttle if you need to. Once again, just come off the brakes, let the car roll, and then accelerate out. You can use the curbing on the exit. Once again, it's raised, it'll catch you if you need to be. It's not too bad on the exit for disqualifications. You can go over the white line. It's not too, you don't have to worry too much. And that's Murray's Corner, and that's the lap of Bathurst on Map Panorama in the GTR. And we're going to go into a really fast commentary now of the lap, and I'll try and explain things really quickly as the lap unfolds. So that's the 12.797. So here we go. You're going to brake just after the shadow here. You're going to drop to second gear. Remember, braking late's better than braking early here. Accelerate really fast out of there. Don't go too wide on the exit, otherwise you will get disqualified. So we're going to accelerate down this straight, and all you're going to look for now is the road marking in the middle. Basically, you're going to brake either on that or just after that, depending on your lap times. So I brake just after that. I brake hard and aggressive, and I want to turn in. I trail brake a little bit just to screw off a bit more speed, and then accelerate around. Don't hit the curb, just be as close to the curb as possible, and then accelerate out. Watch out on the right hand side. Then you're going to let off, turn in, brake a little bit, and then maintain your braking. Vary it slightly, make sure you get on the inside. Use the camber, straighten up, and then accelerate out. Don't worry about the inside curb. Don't go too far to the left straight away. Let off, turn in, balance your throttle, turn in. Don't matter if you graze a wall slightly. Use the curb again to your advantage. Brake early here if you need to, or brake late. Bit too jerky there. Do be careful of that. Accelerate out. Watch out for the exit again for disqualifications. Just make sure the car settles through here. Sorry, through now. All you want through here is stability. So turn in, straight line as much braking as you can, because the more straight line braking you do, better efficiency. Get a really tight line here for a really good left-hander. That's where time is gained on that left-hander. Be aware of that. Once again, this left-hander coming up is where all the time's gained. Be careful. Turn in, let the car roll, and then accelerate out really quickly out of there. You're going to get a lot of time if you get those corners right. Those two left-handers are the key to this lap. Get one of them right, you're on for a good lap. Get both of them right, you're on for an epic lap. And then obviously the rest of it has to fold round those two corners. As we approach the last corner, you're going to straight line this corner as much as you can. Be careful of any disqualification, and brake hard, balance any weights with the throttle, and then you're going to turn in. Try and be a bit more aggressive than I am there, and accelerate through. You can just be aggressive there with the right hander, and we're going to come up to Murray's Corner once again. Don't be too aggressive here, you want to back off a little bit. Brake, third to second gear, let the car roll a little bit. Use the exit corner if you need to balance any weight that's moving over or it starts to oversteer, and then cross the line for the 2:12. That's been the guide for Bathurst and the GTR for GT Academy Round 3. Any questions or comments, let me know. Be happy to help out, and make sure you check out the other guides if you struggled with any of the sort of information. I'm sort of following these guides on through, but we have one more guide to come, and it's going to be for the final round, and that's the one that's going to count. So do practice these rounds now, because we're going to come into the final 2 weeks of GT Academy, and it's going to be very, very crucial. So keep practicing, keep going for those laps, and we'll see you in round 4. Thanks very much for watching.